Okay, in today's tutorial we're going to build this dynamic title macro, that does something like this. Fairly standard title kind of animation. What's different about this one is if we come to the middle of our animation, we can now change the text elements and the size of the box, and everything will maintain this pattern and the animation will be unaffected. So for example, if we come to the main text, we can change it to something else. Now, because the text has shrunk, you notice you don't have a mask on your border anymore. So if we now increase the size of the text, the border will come back. Or we can keep the text as it was and increase the tracking, and again the border will come back. Basically each of these text elements has a mask underneath it that follows the size of the text. The photo and video words are the same. What we can also do is adjust the size of our box. So if we want to bring everything in a bit, we will just reduce the height on the box and everything will come in. And what you notice is that the text stays relative to the edge of the box. So yeah, that's basically it. And once we've sort of adjusted it and once it's cached, we can play through and you can see that the animation remains the same. Okay, let's get on with it. So I would normally at this stage go through make sure your effects library is turned on, come down to effects, grab a fusion comp and drag it onto your timeline. I'm not going to do that today because I've already set one up here. I've set it up deliberately because I wanted this screen to be available for you to have a look at. Basically, the masks and positioning are all driven by expressions, and these are the various expressions that we use throughout this fusion comp, and we'll come to them in turn as we go through it. What you'll notice is certain words I've highlighted in red. These words refer to nodes within the fusion comp and will need to be edited depending on which comp you're referring to at which time. Again, I'll cover it as we're going along. So the first thing we need is our background. So to do that, we will bring a background node and a rectangle node, and we will simply take the output of the rectangle into the mask of the background, and we have our background. If you click on the background node, you can change the color to whatever you want. You can change the opacity. You can leave it totally transparent if you want, it makes no odds. So that's our background. Next we're going to need to make the border. To make the border, if you select the rectangle, press Command C, click somewhere outside, and then Shift Command V will make an instance of the rectangle. Basically what that means is anything that I do to the rectangle will happen to the instance. So just for a minute I'll get rid of our expression. So if I click on rectangle and adjust it, if you watch the left hand viewer, the same thing happens to the instance. my expressions back in for you. So what we're going to do with the instance node is we're going to pipe it onto another background, or into another background should I say. And again, we can make this whatever colour you want. I'm going to make it red. Now for the border, we need to be able to adjust whether the rectangle is solid or not, and we need to be able to adjust the border width in the instance without affecting the actual rectangle. To do that, you come up to the word solid, right click and pick de-instance. We do the same with the border width, right click, de-instance. Now the border width and the solid checkbox act independently. So if we uncheck solid and we increase the border width slightly, we now have an outline to our box. What I'm going to do for the sake of clarity for me, because it's just the way I work, I brought a background node in, connected it to the media out, and I'm going to make this background node transparent. It just gives me a line to hang everything onto. So first off, we're going to take the background 2 node, which is our border, and we're going to merge it onto our background 1 node, which is our background. And then you can see the border is in front of our background. I'm now going to merge the whole lot onto our line. To all intent and purposes, nothing's happened. So the first thing I'm going to do is start by animating our box. Now, ordinarily, you would click your rectangle, you would keyframe your width and height, and you would run your animation that way. Unfortunately, we can't do that because I want the user to be able to adjust the width and height but still have the animation. So to do that, we have to develop slave controls, if you like, for width and height. So we're going to animate from frame 0 to frame 12, and basically we're just going to start with no box and have it grow out to whatever size we select. First thing we need to do is hover over width, right click, select modify with, and then calculation. This activates the modifiers tab here, which if we come into, now has these controls. The first operand is our default of 0.5. The operator we're going to change to multiply, and then we're going to set the animation on the second operand. So at frame 0 we want the operand to be 0 because we're multiplying whatever number is here by whatever number is here to give the result, and we want it to be 0, so we'll set a keyframe. Next we're going to come forward to frame 12 and we're going to change this value to 1 because that's when we want our box to be at its full size. So now what we've got is our width going from 0 to whatever size we choose. Now we're going to come back to tools and we're going to do exactly the same for height. So right click, modify with, calculation, come into our modifiers, and you see that we now have a calculation for height. So again, 0.5 is the default, multiplier is the operator, and at frame 0 we need this to be 0, and then at the end of our animation, which is frame 12, we need this to be 1. So now if we play that through, our box appears. Simple as that. But what this allows us to do is, if we now come into our tools tab again, come past frame 12 so we're at full size, we can actually adjust the size of our box to whatever we want, and our animation will go from 0 to our new size, thus making our box dynamic. So that's our box animation. I'm just going to bring these over a little bit. So now we're going to start introducing our text. So we'll introduce the main text across the center first. So we're going to bring a text node in, and we're going to merge that text node onto our line, and we're going to put some text in so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so we've got some text in. At the minute, if we increase our size of text beyond the box just stays in place underneath it. What we're going to do is apply a mask that takes the size of our text and adjusts accordingly. That's where our expressions are going to come in. So if we just increase size on this a second. So these first two lines here are the expressions needed to build our mask. Basically what these expressions are doing is they're saying in text 1 they're going to look at the topmost point and the bottommost point of our text for the height, and the extreme left and right edges of our text for our width. If you're interested, these expressions came from Bill Justice's website, which I'll link in the description. Bill has a phenomenal resource on his website. He's got a really interesting YouTube channel that's well worth checking out. And as I say, I'll link both below. So what we need to do is get a mask that uses these expressions. So if we just bring that back up. So this mask is going to be masking this red border line, and that red border line is here and it goes into the foreground of this merge. So any masks that are attached to that merge will affect the red border but won't affect the background. So make a bit of room, and we will bring a rectangle mask in, and we will pipe it into the merge mask input. Now at the minute nothing obvious happened, but if I just adjust the edge of that mask, you can see that it's masking the red line. Now we want the mask to go the other way, so anything that's under the mask to disappear. All we need to do is come over to the inspector and click invert, and we get the effect. Now at the minute, if you wanted to change the size of the text, you would need to manually change this box each time. Using these expressions, we're going to automate that. So what we're worried about is the width and height of this rectangle. My bad. One thing I needed to point out that I don't think I did. No, I didn't. We need to tie everything to the center of our rectangle. So this new text needs to be tied so that it stays in the center of our rectangle. To do that, we're going to use a very simple expression. So we're going to click on our rectangle. We're going to click the pin at the top so that our rectangle stays in the inspector, and then we're going to click on our text. Now in the text layout tab, we have center. What we're going to do is right click on that, pick expression, and you notice this plus sign appears. Now if you click and hold that and drag, you need to come down until you hover over the word center for your rectangle, let go, and now that places the value for the rectangle center into our text. So basically if we move our rectangle, our text will move with it. Now we need to tie the center of our mask to the center of our text. So to do that is a similar process. We'll unpin rectangle 1, we'll select text, and we will pin it. We'll select our new rectangle 2. We will look for center, right click, expression, and then come down and again drop it over the word center. We could just as easily have used rectangle 1 center, but text 1 center works as well. So again, now the mask will stay centered on our text. Okay, onto the fun expression stuff. So let's double click that, get rid of that pin so the inspector's not cluttered. Now if we click rectangle, what we need to do is put expressions on the width and the height that correspond to the width and the height of the text. These expressions do that, and then because of this plus 0.025 or plus 0.05 at the end, they just give a little bit of a cushion, if you like. So I'm going to start off with width. You can either right click and pick expression, or if you double click in the value box and just type equals, it opens up your expression bar for you. Now I've got the expressions on this little note here so that I can copy and come over to my expression window and paste, and in it goes. So now our mask will stay just a little bit wider than our text. Now we're going to do the same for the height. So come across, copy, and if we double click in height, type equals, we get our expression box, and then paste. And now our mask will increase or decrease relative to that text size. So if we go in and change the size of our text, you can see the mask goes with it. So if you want to push it silliness, the mask will continue to sort of be as big as needed. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to animate this, and again the animation I use is animating the size of the text. So we go through the same slave controls that we did for our rectangle. So I'm going to animate the text from frame 12, and I'm going to make it up to frame 20, no, I'm going to go up to 36, so it comes out over about a second. These times are all arbitrary, you can do whatever times you want, but that's what I'm going to do. So 12 to 36. So again, we need to come to our size control, right click, modify with calculation. Again, our modifier is turned on. We can come in and we have the same dialog. Now the default is 0.08 for text, which is here. We'll leave it at the default, and then the user or yourself can change it each time you use it. We're going to go to multiply, and we're going to come to frame 12. And we're going to keyframe 0. Then we're going to come forward to 36. And we're going to change the value to 1. Now, if you noticed, when we are at 0, our mask disappears. Instead of 0, set it to 0.01. It's barely noticeable. You cannot see the text, or you can hardly see the text, so it makes no odds. As the animation flows, it won't be noticeable, but it stops it disappearing. We need to make a couple of little tweaks later on when we introduce our sort of top and bottom text, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So that's now basically our box and main text animated. Again, because of the way it's set up, if you come into text, you've got a little red diamond which indicates that there's a modifier attached to it. It's not animated on this particular slider. So what that allows us to do is we can increase the size of the text, and the animation will still run as it should, and your mask will appear as it should. Okay, so now we're going to put in our top text. So for that we're going to need another text node. We can pipe it in to our line, and we can put in some text. Now at the minute it's set overlapping here. What we need is for it to be sat up here. So to do that, we're going to use another expression, which is this expression here. Basically what this expression does is it gives a XY coordinate, and it says that the X and Y coordinates are the box center. So in this case I've not called it box, but box is rectangle 1. So when I type it in fact what's probably easier is if I press F2 on rectangle 1 and just name it box. So box center X, so it will take the X value from our box center. And then the second coordinate is the Y coordinate, and it says box center Y. So again, the center position here, plus half the height. And then that will make this text sit on this line up here. So if we go to text 2, come to the layout tab and center, right click expression, and we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to bring our crib sheet in, and we're going to copy that one. So Command C into our box, paste, boom. And now no matter what we do with our box height, the text will stick to it. So what we need to do now is build a mask for this. So again, we're using these expressions, but when we do it this time we're going to have to edit it so that it's text 2 in each of these places rather than text 1. So we're going to select our first rectangle, we're going to click on rectangle, which will add another rectangle in. We're going to come on rectangle 1 as it's now called, because rectangle 2 box was rectangle 1 but we renamed it, so we're going to come to this rectangle and we're going to change the paint mode to subtract. And we're going to come into our width and height to change them. So again, if we double click in width, type equals and get an expression, get our crib sheet out, same expression, copy, paste. Now we need to go back through this text, so it's probably easy to start at the beginning. If we work through, and where we've got 1, simply change it to 2. So text 2 instead of text 1. And now you'll see it's gone to the width of the word photo. So now we will do the same for height. Copy, double click on height, equals, and paste. And again, come back to the beginning and work through and change text 1 to text 2. And our box is now the same size as our text, but again it needs to be tied to the center. So with text 2 open, pin it, select our second rectangle, and on center right click, expression, and drag down to center, and then it ties it together. And if we just unpin that, so now whatever we do to text 2 will also have a dynamic mask on it. So as the text increases, the mask increases. So you can change the size or the tracking. Now we're also going to animate this, and again we're going to animate the size. So we need to have a slave control for that, and this time we're going to come to 36 and we'll go to 48, I think. So come to frame 36, click on size, right click on size, modify with calculation. Again you've got your modifier, and again we've got the same controls. So multiply frame 36 we're going to have at 0, and frame 48, should we go to 48 or should no, we'll go to 60. Frame 60 will be 1. So now your text will come in like so. Now the difficulty with this, as you've noticed, is that when the word photo is at 0, our border disappears. So the way to get round that is if we come into our second rectangle, or our text 2 rectangle, and at frame 36 we turn the level to 0 and keyframe it, and then at frame come forward 1 frame, set it back to 1 and keyframe it, and then the text is starting to appear, so the animation looks natural. Basically what has happened there is I've just turned the mask off up to that point, so it's not affecting anything, and then the mask gets turned back on as the word comes in. Now we are going to do something similar for our bottom text. So again, we need a text node. We're going to put in our text, and again we need to position it. So to position it, we're going to use this expression, which is the same as the top one. The only difference being is that here you've got minus rather than plus. So the Y is the center minus half the height. So we will, no, we can't select it from there, numpty, we need our script sheet. We will copy from here. We will go into our text 3 node, layout, right click on center, expression, clear this out, paste in our new expression. And our text moves where we want it. Now, what I did was, rather than do everything again, is I took this rectangle, copy and paste, and that puts in another node. Now all we need to do is go through and change the values. So our center is now not text 2 but is text 3, so we can change that. And again we need to come through each of the width and height expressions and change them to 3. And the same for height. You need to be ever so careful with these expressions because they are case sensitive. They also need the full stops where they are. If you mess up the case or mess up the full stops, it will mess up the whole expression, and it's a pain in the what's-it trying to find out what you've done wrong. What we've also done by copying that node is we've also copied all the animation. So where we had the sort of on-off bit here, we've copied it. What we now need to do is go through the same process of animating the size that we've done with the other things. So we will go to the size, we'll right click, modify with calculation, into modifiers, multiply, come to frame 36, keyframe that at 0, come to frame 60, keyframe it to 1, and now your top and bottom text will appear at the same time. And that is basically your animation. Your box comes in, your text comes in, and your top and bottom text follow it. The final thing I did was, rather than animate the out section, is I used a little combination of a Timespeed node and a Dissolve node. Now I keep it in my effects library. It's called responsive, and if I bring this down, I've got a Timespeed node and a Dissolve node. Now basically the Dissolve node will switch between its own foreground input or the Timespeed node, which becomes the background input. and the Timespeed node is set to basically play the whole thing backwards. So what happens is at the halfway point of the clip, so about frame 96, dissolve switches. If you watch here, so for the first half of the clip, the foreground is being played through dissolve. When you pass the halfway point, dissolve switches, and the background, which is the Timespeed node, is played through dissolve. The Timespeed node is set to -1, so basically it plays the clip, the first half of the clip, backwards. What that does in effect is it reverses the animation at the end, like that. If you're interested, the expression for the dissolve node is here, and it's if with two i's, comp render end minus time is less than comp render end divided by 2, then either 0 or 1, and that's what's happening there. It just saves time for me. If I want the animation at the end to be the same as the beginning, it seems pointless to just redo it. I can do it that way quicker. So that's basically our animation. Now, as I say, you can, in the macro that we made, or in the title that we made, you've got the option to change your fonts, your text, your colours, your sizes. So that's basically what we're going to do next, is we're going to go back into Fusion and we're going to make that macro. Okay, so the thing with macros, you need to select all your nodes, but you need to select them in a particular order. You need to select the nodes that you want the user to be able to change or make adjustments to first. So the nodes that are going to be changeable will be text 1. If you then press and hold the command key and select text 2, text 3. So that'll put you 3 text nodes at the top of your inspected list. Next we want our box to adjust the width and the height. We want our border so that we can adjust the border width. We then want our box colour, our border colour, and that is all we want the user to change. The rest we can just pick in whatever order we want, as long as all the nodes are picked except my expression node, which I don't need. So once you've done that, right click on any of the nodes, go to macro and create macro, and you get this really freaky window opens up. First job, name. Helps to be able to spell. Dynamic. We'll call this one, just because I've already got a dynamic title in my folder. So okay, so now we need to select what we want the user to be able to change. So with text 1, ignore the image section and we come to text. Now you can use these as labels, so if you double click and change that to main, so you've got main text, and just check the ones that you want your user to be able to change. We don't want him changing size because that's our animation, but we can do that another way. So you can change tracking. So that's that. We don't need any of the others, so we can close text 1. Now if you come into calculation 3, it may be calculation 1, 2 or whatever on yours, I don't know, but the calculation directly below text 1 has our modifier here, and the thing that the user can change is the first operand. So again, we're going to need to label it. So delete everything out of the box and just type in main text size. And then you can close that one. Ignore this. Next, come to text 2 and do the same. So this is our top text. So we can select again the things we want the user to change, not size, and then we'll come into the next calculation and the first operand. Relabel it and select it. And finally text 3, again ignore image, this is bottom text. And you can change the text, the font, the style, the colour. Where it says colour, that's actually the red component of your RGB colour. Not size, tracking. Text 3. Below text 3 you've got another calculation, again your first operand, and this is bottom text size, and select it. Now we come to our box. This is the rectangle mask, not the actual colour. Now, if I remember rightly, there is nothing in here that we need to change. I'm just looking for height and width. So you've got height and width here, but again, they're the ones that are animated, so we don't need to change anything in the box. But we do need to come to calculation 1, and again first operand, and that I believe was width. Was it? Did we do width first? I think so. So box width and check. Now box is tricky because calculation 2 is also for box, and that's our height. So box height, check. Now we've got our two background nodes. Background 1 was our main background, so we can open that. Oh no, instance of rectangle first. So this is our border, so we need to come to border width. Yeah, that's what we needed in that one. Oh, and we did need something in box. So if you come back to box, we're looking for corner radius. So we've done border width there. Right, background, this is your colours. So again, you don't need image. We can type background colour if you want to have the full range of gradients and stuff. Click type and just work your way all the way down the list. I'm not going to for this, I just want a basic colour. And then background 2, same thing. Relabel the colour to border colour, and then red, green, blue, alpha. So again, the label is the red component, and that should be that. There's nothing else that we need to worry about. Now if you click close, do you want to save your macro? Yes, we do. And it will bring up this dialog box. Now by default it saves to the macro folder. We don't want that, we want it in our titles folder. So for me that's Mac HD, library, application support, BlackmagicDesign, and then if you scroll down you see Fusion, keep coming, you see templates, edit, and finally titles. And if we just add a couple of spaces in there to make it look pretty and click save, and that should, all things being equal, give us a nice title like this one. So what I'll do is I'll get rid of that one. Now for our title to show, we need to quit Resolve, so I'll just quickly do that and I'll be back with you. Okay, so we're back. Right, now if we go to titles, and I'm going to search because I've got lots of titles. We called it dynamic. So dynamic title was the one that was on the timeline at the start. This is the one we've just made. Moment of truth, I've not tried this. It's either going to work or it's not. But we will see in a minute. So just simply drag it onto your timeline. Move your playhead over it. And you have all your default settings. If you just give it a second to cache. So once it's cached, play it through. Cool, everything seems to be working as it should. It should now fade out and go away. Brilliant. So we can now come to the middle of our clip and we can go to town with these. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to come down, see if we labelled these the right way around now. Yeah, we did. Okay. I don't know why it flashes on and off like that. It's really annoying, but hey, that's Resolve for you. So we can bring the width in, we can bring the height down a bit, and we can bring the chord radius up, and maybe drop the border width a little bit to make it, not too much. Now we can go to town on our text, put in whatever font you want. And as I say, it doesn't matter, it can be as big or as little as you want. It will automatically adjust the masks to fit. And everything should continue to work as you would expect. We can maybe give us a nice, I don't know, a nice orange border. So you made all the changes. You're going to give it a second to cache, and we can play it again. And it all works as it should. It's not the most interesting title I've ever seen, but I guess the theory of what we've just been doing will maybe come in handy for expanding on the whole sort of idea of mapping any kind of box or rectangle to the size of the text was one that I sort of found quite fascinating. And I think it's quite cool. Anyway, enough of me waffling. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to like, subscribe and hit the notification button, and I will see you when I can think of something else to talk about. Cheers.